drinks targeted at children. They're going to be banned. This is for the first time, and it is under a new plan to tackle our growing childhood obesity problem.
Yeah, the rules already apply during children's TV programmes for foods that are high in fat, sugar or salt.
So now they'll extend that ban from television to other children's media. That includes online, social media, cinema ads, billboard advertising.
But it only applies when 25% of the audience is aged under 16, which critics say won't include most websites.
And finally, ads won't be allowed to use celebrities or mascots unless they are promoting healthier options. Well, we're going to speak to Tim Rycroft from the Food and Drink Federation. Child psychologist Emma Kenny joins us now from Bury. Emma, you are a child psychologist, so you have the scientific expertise. You are also a mum. Do you think this ban goes far enough?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it doesn't even begin to tackle the fact that we're a nation of food addicts. It doesn't really do anything about the huge food corporations who are in bed with the government. It doesn't actually tackle the real epidemic, but it's one of those situations where obviously it's better than it was, but the idea that children aren't exposed to those kind of unregulated adverts, for example, at other times, doesn't make sense. I mean, children are always online at different times of the day. They don't just go to bed at 9 o'clock whether we want them to or otherwise. And I think that really it's always the same. These kind of bans are approached, or these kind of modifications to situations are given, but it doesn't really do anything to change what we're facing, which is an absolute epidemic, a pandemic even, of, you know, wherever the Western world goes, we create obesity. Yeah. What we need to do is completely tackle the food giants and change the way that we legal, you know, the way that we deal with food per se.
Emma, just talk me through, because lots of people have got in touch with us this morning talking about the fact that it's not down to the advertising. Parents just need to learn to say no to their children. 10-year-olds shouldn't be deciding whether they have their sweet treats or what they should be eating. Just talk us through from the psychologist's perspective, how influential this sort of advertising can actually be, and how difficult that is for the parents then to try and control their children's habits and choices.
Well, pester power is very powerful. That's why it's known to be a way that marketers influence the parents' choices on the child's choices. So undoubtedly, children subliminally are approached by advertisers all the time through, as you were talking about, mascots, cartoons, and all of those images. But also parents are influenced, because in the UK, you know, parents tend to want to give their children what they want because they're loving and caring. But the problem is that they are being influenced by all of these cues that suggest that their children should be given this kind of food because it makes them happy. But actually what parents need to understand, and I think probably this is why it makes me so angry when we do these kind of tiny little tiptoes towards something that really needs to drastically change, actually parents need to realise that when you're feeding your children these products, it's not food. It's chemical compounds synergized to look like food.
All right,
you're
now,
essentially poisoning them.
Well, that's an interesting phrase, and you say you want to hold the food giants to account. We have on the sofa Tim Rycroft, who is from the Food and Drink Federation, representative organisation for some of those food giants. So Emma and Tim, I mean, Tim, Emma's accusing your members of poisoning children with the amount of junk food.
I think that's extraordinarily extreme. And I think it's so unfair to describe today's announcement as tiptoes. It's a really significant step. We're extending the ban from television into online and social media. We know that children now spend more time looking at online screens than they do TV screens. So we're responding to changing habits to make sure that they are protected. It's a big step forward, industry-led. It's the right thing to do. And I think we should be welcoming it. I understand some people think it doesn't go far enough yet, but I still think it's a really significant step.
Emma?
I think the idea that industry is involved in these kind of changes is really worrying. Actually, what you see in a lot of the nutritional organisations who claim to be caring about the food types that we feed children, you're actually supported by huge industry giants who make their profit from people indulging in food types and drink types that are really bad for us. And actually, let's start having genuine conversations. Actually, we are poisoning children, we are poisoning adults, and you know why? Because people throughout the UK and Western world are massively obese. That's not because they're lazy, it's not because they're greedy, it's because they're addicted. reducing the advertising that you have online is not going to tackle what we all know is the real crippling problem, and that is what goes in food and the profiteering that's made by those companies.
Tim Rycroft to respond to that.
Today's step is one of a number of steps that are being taken to tackle obesity, which is a huge public health, public policy challenge. We acknowledge that, of course. At the moment, we're in the middle of the sugars reduction programme with the government that was announced in their childhood obesity plan earlier this year. That's going to have a profound impact on reducing the amount of sugar and then calories in food as we go forward. So there's all sorts of action already being taken, and I just think that's a very extreme view we're hearing. We're not poisoning children. We've never had access to more nutritious, high-quality food at all price points in this country than we have
Undoubtedly,
today.
a lot of your members, though, do create and make and sell the food that Emma's talking about, the food that tastes great and the kids absolutely love and the adults absolutely love, but isn't good for you. And that responsibility sits squarely on their shoulders to try and control that, to try and help parents and help children. We have an obesity epidemic.
And that's why, Ben, it's different for adults. For adults, we have to take a measure of personal responsibility for our diet choices. For children, that's not the same. We have to help them, we have to help parents to make well-informed choices to ensure that they get healthy, balanced diets. But for adults, there is freedom. These products are loved by people. And I think for adults, there should be the right to advertise and promote them.
All right, Tim Rycroft from the Food and Drink Federation. Emma Kenny, thank you very much indeed. I know there's a lot of parents will be equally exercised about that topic this morning. We've had a big response on that, haven't we?
We have. Carol says kids are influenced by these adverts. Ultimately, the parents are buying them treats, though. Take responsibility, stop blaming everybody else. Claire says 10-year-olds shouldn't be making decisions about what food is bought. It's down to the parents, stricter parents. Lee Holdener says next we're going to be putting sugary and salty products behind shutters like they do for cigarettes. They don't need to hide or remove them or stop advertising. They just need to start educating. A lot of people talking about that, actually, just understanding the importance of it.
Big problem of our times.